Welcome back to HBO Girls Rewatch.
I'm Amelia.
And I'm Evan.
And today, what episode are we covering, Evan?
Ooh, we're covering season 4, episode 2, Triggering.
Oh my God. And that's so beautiful because I feel like I've been #triggered a lot in the last month.
Hashtag every time I step outside this house, I'm #triggered.
Sorry, I just saw the Amazon delivery. What is it? It looks like Redbubble, but I got all my posters.
Why would Amazon be delivering Redbubble?
Look behind us. We now have a girls' wall. I went to the print store this morning and printed all these out, and the guy at the store was like, what could this possibly be for? And I was like, listen, a project. But
yeah, you never print much out until you like have a school project and or need a girls wall for your girls related podcast.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody knows that that's customary in the
I haven't had this
community.
many prints since a poster board when I like talked about some science experiment I did with fish and plants and making your own ecosystem.
Oh, I thought you said fish in plants, and I was like, people are putting fish in their bodies?
No, the fish were going into the plants too because it was like a tank.
Like growing plants, not like in plants like silicone.
Oh, wait, that'd be kind of chic if you could have fish inside of you.
Yeah, you're like, these tits, 100% fish.
Which actually works on so many levels.
Yeah. People are like, oh, it's fishy down there. It's like, whoops.
You edit so many drag queen podcasts and it comes through.
And it comes through. Can you tell? It was so fun. So for work, I had to like do every podcast I worked for Spotify Wrapped and send it to them. And it's like, that's so fun. Like I got to like engage. Everybody only gets their one Spotify Wrapped. I had so many to go through.
Yeah, it was Christmas for you. You got to wrap so many things. You actually did 8 nights of Hanukkah.
It literally, I felt like I did 10 days of Hanukkah in one morning.
10?
Oh, is it less?
Traditionally, it's 8.
Oh, I don't.
You worked at a Jewish summer camp.
I used to be Christian. Okay, so we actually forgot to do this last episode, but we're bringing it back. We're going to read one nice review, one mean review. If you haven't reviewed our podcast, please, 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 we're begging on our hands and knees to go to Apple Podcasts, rate us, leave us whatever. Also, if you're on the YouTube version, please feel free to comment. I feel like people are being shy over there, and it's like, there's no need to be shy. We're family over there. Okay, you ready?
No, we live and die by your comments.
So Julia Reisman says, subject, so funny and uplifting. It's like, can we actually pause right there?
Is that the subject?
Somebody thinks we're uplifting. That's the best thing I've ever heard.
She doesn't listen.
She's like, the photo looks uplifting. As soon as I dive in, maybe not.
Bitch faces.
I love listening to HBO Girls. I love Evan. He makes me laugh. Oh, is this the one we already read?
No, there's another one.
Oh, another one about you?
It's actually a friend of mine. It actually gets a lot of my friends.
I think you read that one.
No, I read Sophie Lieber's last time.
Oh, I love Evan. He makes me laugh. Okay, and I actually think this is actually an amazing point to come.
For you to read that.
It's like,
well, you're #triggered. You're triggered.
A close friend said to me this week, I know it's hard for you because Evan is more well liked by everyone than
so
you are. And I was like, no worries. Thank you for understanding. Like, that's such an insane thing to remind me of.
No, it was in comparison to someone else other than you, though.
They're like, and your association with this other person, you should feel happy about because they like you more than they like them. And I'm like, all right, this all just seems mean-spirited and not fruitful.
I've never heard someone talk in those terms before. It was ridiculous, but I kind of loved.
Ultimately, I kind of love when somebody says something kind of really insane.
We can't keep this in a podcast, can we?
We can.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Okay, and then bad review. Are we ready? 1 star, subject terrible, which is close to triggered. No, it's not.
Well, it's triggering.
As a diehard fan of girls, I thought I had a lot of tolerance for insufferable characters, but these hosts take the cake. If you're looking for whiny, delusionally woke, painfully Gen Z people with zero critical thinking skills or grasp on reality, then this is your pod.
I literally smiled the whole time you read that.
I'm like, this is honestly an amazing selling point. Can we print it out?
Isn't that what everyone's deal is? It's like, that's why Emma Chamberlain's being roasted online, but she built a whole career on it.
Right. Like, she does make $10 million or whatever to not know things and have a philosophy podcast for girls. But
everyone's like, you should go to 4-year college. It's like, when I was in a 4-year college, I didn't learn a single thing.
No, I actually learned critical
philosophy?
Thinking. Well, you went to Tulane. It's different.
I mean, in high school, I actually learned critical thinking because all my high school, I had really smart English teachers in high school. And I was a marketing major, and they refuse to let you think they are.
I remember I took one class with this kid who I was on the sketch comedy troupe at my college, and he was like, I kind of want to get into comedy. Should I join the troupe? Is it worth it? And I was like, honestly, it's not that worth it. And then a year later, COVID happened, and he blew up, and it was Roman Reed or whatever. Bowman Martinez.
I like that it's like you deserve credit for that. You deserve to be in a bibliography. I hope he tells a story one day. Like he's sitting at a conference for Vanity Fair. They're interviewing him, and they're like, how did you decide to make sketch videos? It's like one mean looking brunette was like, you have to not go into the sketch comedy class. Just do your own thing. Blank.
I want the credit. But no, they did it all on their own, and it had nothing to do with me. But it's cool.
I actually think it's really cool. It's cool that there's so many stories that can touch.
There are so many stories that can touch. And okay, I'm actually so excited to talk about stories today in this episode. I think we have the most perfect guest to have on for this specific episode, because they are kind of like living Hannah's dream, which is where they write blogs and people pay them and then they survive off of that. And like, okay, jealous.
What does that one character say? Like, stories do have meaning.
Stories do have meaning. And Rayne Fisher-Quann knows the power of that. We're so excited to have her on.
Cross dissolve.
Guys, it's Rayne Fisher-Quann.
Oh my God. We just had the best chit chat. I wish we could record. We should like hook up a mic the moment someone walks into our apartment and record that part for the podcast.
Yeah.
That should be the Patreon.
That should be the Patreon exclusive. Yeah.
And you like shouldn't tell people that you're doing that. You should just
I'm like hugging you, like clipping a mic to you.
On the back,
unknowingly.
slipping the mic pack into the back pocket.
You go home. We're listening to everything going on throughout your day.
And that's on the Patreon.
It would do so well.
It would do numbers.
It would do numbers.
Wait, this is an amazing
pay rent.
business opportunity for us.
Someone
really,
did
really
offer
good
to
idea.
rent this podcast studio, but now we've kind of amazingly desecrated it, so
This
no one else
is
can do another
so
podcast here
awesome.
other than us.
Okay, and Lena looked so good on the New York Magazine cover.
I was saying that's Chapel Roan coded almost.
Oh, it really is.
It's a little too high for the video, but just describing it, it's Lena with her hands on her waist with the most Chapel Roan dress on ever.
We'll post
Yeah.
it to Grid. Why not?
Post it to her.
Post it to Grid.
Okay, well, we have just already had a whole podcast on our own together, but
Yeah.
now we'll dive into the one that's public and on YouTube or whatever.
All our
Yeah.
energies crash.
We all get really quiet. No, episode 4. I don't know.
Episode 2, season 4, Triggered.
Triggered.
Before we dive into this specific episode, we have to know, what was your journey to finding girls?
Well, I actually watched Girls for the first time pretty recently. I like was going through my Twitter to try to see like when I first started watching Girls. And I think I started watching Girls almost exactly this time last year,
Oh my God.
which is really beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a Twitter find and then kind of...
Yeah.
Were
well,
people
Oh my
talking about
God.
it on Twitter and you were like, I want to know more?
I think that like there was almost something in the collective unconscious because
Totally.
there
We
was
sensed
just,
it.
everyone sensed
Listen,
it.
that's the one thing we knew. We sensed it.
Because like no one really was talking about it, but one day I woke up and I was just like, I need to watch Girls, and then I started tweeting about it, and then literally at the same time everybody was tweeting about it. Like, do you guys remember when like I'm sure, I mean,
It
you
was
were on the
undeniable,
fucking
yeah.
floor, you were on the fucking ground floor when Girls just suddenly had the Girls Renaissance.
There's something about 10 years. They're always like, trends come in cycles every
Yeah.
10 years. I was like, that's a lie. You're lying to my face. And then Girls did its 10-year anniversary,
Yeah.
and everyone's like, well, I'm kind of going to get back into
It was
that.
Yeah.
it was because there was like one like article or news thing that was like the picture of them on the bench or whatever, which
Yeah.
I don't
it's
even think we
actually
printed out.
Pre that.
Well, that one, it was like the 10-year anniversary of Lena Dunham like selling this show, which of course she sold the show to HBO by
Well,
being
that's
like,
why is everyone
it's
watching
about girls.
It's about Girls. Yeah, I've read her letter.
Yeah.
It was so awesome. But yeah, like I also started coming to New York for like, you know, to live my life
And you're
or whatever.
from Toronto.
I'm from Toronto.
I love when people from Toronto come to New York because now every movie that's filmed in New York, it takes place. It's actually being filmed in
it's
Toronto.
being filmed in Toronto.
So you already did Baby New York, and you're like,
Yeah.
I actually want to go see what the real thing's like.
Well, yeah, like Toronto is like New York if it didn't have like all the stuff that makes it good.
So Long Island City.
Yeah, yeah. It's like if there was no Long Island City. So I started because I grew up in Toronto and then I lived in Vancouver for 4 years, which is like
Whoa.
on the West Coast. And then I moved back to Toronto so I could come to New York, like so I could like visit New York and stuff.
You really did like the New York LA bi-coastal minute Canada version.
Yeah, the Canada version, which was really brave and not
Hannah
as
says
fun.
the same thing. I'm doing bi-coastal Iowa, New York.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I'm bi-coastal New York, Lake Ontario.
Of course.
A coast can literally be anything.
A coast can be anything. A coast can be a border of a landlocked province.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Why not?
God, it feels good to hear the word province.
Right? Well,
take us back.
something that I want to talk about, and this is a little bit off topic, but I was looking up where Iowa is on a map because I was like,
You're Canada, it's excused.
I'm Canada, like I don't know. There's so much Iowa in this episode. I was like, let me just situate myself. And what I realized, this is a fact that may shock you both, is that both New York, like I feel like Iowa's pretty far from New York, right? Like,
Well, it's on this coast, kinda.
yeah, it's sort of like in the middle. It's like there's many states in between, but Iowa, if you go like longitudinally or whatever, like if you go to like what's above it, both Iowa and New York are contained within Ontario.
Whoa.
Like,
oh my god.
So it's kind of close.
It's latitude, longitude.
yeah, but like Ontario is just
You know
so
what that
big.
is?
Yes, babe.
Hey, do you know what that is? Or do you not know anything, like a baby?
My reaction to you saying something crazy, you're like, oh, you must just not know about that word.
But
I just don't know the difference between latitude and longitude.
I like looked it up before this.
Ontario's famously huge.
Ontario's so huge, and like I feel like for an American they'd be like, oh no, like I have to drive from New York to Iowa, like I have to pass through so many states, like that's an impossible drive. For a Canadian, you're just driving from Ontario to Ontario,
which is so relatable to Texas, because growing up in Texas, we'd go on road trips and it'd be like the first 9 hours you're still in Texas.
Yeah, that's
and finally
Ontario.
you're like, oh my god, New Mexico.
So growing up in New York, 20 minutes from my house was Connecticut. So going to a different state was never a big deal for me.
Yeah.
You meet anyone from another state, it's like going to another state was it was like something to write home about. It's on your holiday Christmas card. You can even cross the border.
I mean, like Jersey, I was so shocked to find out about Jersey that
you'll add to your Instagram bio.
What?
You know, people are like where they were this year.
Oh,
They'll
yeah.
add to their Instagram bio.
Yeah, NYC airplane emoji, New Jersey. I feel so good when I go through that tunnel. I'm like, I feel like a
what's
jet
the Holland Tunnel?
Yeah.
No, it isn't.
No,
is it?
You're going to New Jersey a lot?
Well, I actually love New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Because like I know that that's like controversial, but many of my best friends are from New Jersey.
Wow.
And I just like totally by coincidence, and I just think that New Jersey like produces an incredible like class of people.
Oh my god.
No comment.
And I
Alex's
like
ex-boyfriend's from New Jersey.
No, Amelia.
whoa, well, I take it back.
It's fine. It's no problem.
Cut that.
Okay, amazing. So you watched it last year and you were like, I'm moving my ass there immediately.
I mean, literally, yeah. Like, I mean, not to be too earnest, but I really feel like I was watching it and I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel so represented by this. Like I had so many moments of like obviously seeing myself in the girls in like a negative and humiliating way,
of course,
but also in a way where I was like, I'm changing and there's like so many things that I want, and like I don't know what I'm doing with my life. But like when I went to New York and when I would like, I started going for like a week out of every month. And I was like living with my ex-boyfriend, and I ended up being a horrible girlfriend because every month I like spent half the month by myself in New York.
You're like, I gotta go to Times Square. Sorry for not texting you
I-
back.
This is a
I'm
story
really
of
sorry. I
everyone
had
with
to
at
go to
least
the
10K on
M&M.
Instagram. If you have 10K on Instagram and live into a different state, you're either traveling to New York or LA for at least 1 week out of every month.
Yeah.
And I hear the story across the board.
It's
happening
universal.
to so many people all the time.
Because the thing about New York is that like New York is the closest place you can go to being on a computer. Like, you know what I mean? Like New York is the most computer place. Like if you're like a person on the internet and you want to go somewhere that's like being on the internet, you can only go to New York.
You are so right, because anyone I've ever seen in my FYP, I'm like having casual conversation with here all the time. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. So yeah, I just started going to New York and was like growing so much and like changing so much, and I just like totally fell in love with girls, and I like watched it obsessively, and I like talked about it obsessively to like everyone I knew, and like me and all my friends who were writers were all watching it at the same time, and just like I was really happy to see it having like sort of a critical reappraisal, because I do remember like my only previous engagement with girls was like, I was like maybe 11 or 12 when it was like first coming out. And I remember like seeing that like insane news cycle about it. And like, I remember my parents watched it, and I remember just like...
Oh, because your mom's professor.
That's cool that your mom watched
Your mom's
it.
a professor, so it really makes sense for her.
Yeah, and my mom and my dad are like cool young parents. So they like... Yeah.
Wait, do you have sibs?
I have a younger sibling.
Heaven.
And how cool are they?
They're pretty cool. They're non-binary and a lesbian. They're
okay, this is a story of anyone who has cool parents. Their other sibling, the younger one, is always non-binary.
Yeah.
I'm finding so many people where if they're 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, any of the teen years, they're going to be non-binary if their parents are cool.
Yeah.
I see
let's run a study.
Awesome.
You guys can be the cover art.
Yeah. No, like, let's look into it. No, my younger sibling, their birth name, by the way, is Ever. They're non-binary, so people think they chose their own name, but their birth name is Ever. My parents named us Rayne and Ever.
You're more.
That's amazing.
They are a non-binary asexual lesbian. And they're literally the coolest.
Fuck.
They're
I
so
hear the
cool.
story all the time.
Tales all the time.
You're saying, I know another girl who every single week travels to New York out of the month, has a boyfriend that she abandoned to do this, and has a non-binary sibling.
Wait.
Okay, let's dive into the synopsis. This is Minute to Win It. We are going to run through everything that happens in this episode in case you don't remember.
And away we go. Hannah's looking for apartments, and $1,200 gets her what? And $900 gets her the biggest room of her damn life. LOL. She's just trying to chill out and enjoy class. But what is that? A bat or a bird? I cannot tell. But you know what? Anyway, it's scary, scary, scary. She's trying to live her best life. But I can't remember a single thing to have.
Well, she's biking. She's biking everywhere. She's not so good at it. That's the problem. She's not so good at it. And she's biking to class. A very cool woman tells her that she doesn't have to lock up her bike, and she's like, what, you're not in New York anymore. A damn liar, by the way. She goes into class, she hears an amazing story from an amazing man, and then she does her story and everyone hates it. And
okay, and yeah, it's so devastating for her because she really thought people would celebrate her immediately because she's Hannah, of course. And then she's so sad. She's like, I'm never gonna make it in this goddamn town. She gets home. Somebody has broken into her new giant home. She's like, who the fuck is here? It's Elijah. Elijah's like, New York is hell. Let's go out. Let's party. Let's go to an undergrad party. They have the time of their life. They're dancing on the dance floor. Elijah's teaching a young boy that he's gay. Hannah is like fist fighting a woman in blue paint. It's all happening. And then they wake up and they're like, let's walk across the field and remember that everything's okay. Even though Hannah does call her parents and is like pretending
I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah. I'm gonna kill myself.
This is my favorite conversation
And
of
what
all
Evan
time.
said in code was that there is a scene where a bird flies into Hannah's apartment and she screams and freaks out.
It's a bat.
Oh, and it's actually a bat.
Yeah.
But you know, that's really confusing. It's almost impossible to tell. Because sometimes
It's
birds are
impossible
awake
to
at
tell.
night. Are birds awake at night? And where are they?
Some of them like owls.
I
Like
actually
the
don't know
pigeon?
about
Like,
birds.
for instance, an owl
Where does a pigeon sleep?
is certainly awake
And
at
when
night.
you said that, I was like, owls aren't birds, by the way. And then I was like, I'm mistaken. And that's 1 minute. I was like, fuck you. Birds are...
That's the merch.
Birds and
Owls aren't birds.
Yeah. And like, they have nothing in common.
Well, and that's actually true. Like, they have so little in common.
Owls spinning their
Owls
heads.
spin their whole damn heads around.
Birds can barely do anything. They're kind of like fidgeting their little face.
Literally.
Yeah.
Owls are the non-binary
Limited
younger
dexterity.
sister.
Yeah, that's
Sibling.
so true.
Poor things. Okay, well,
and what an episode it was.
What an episode it was.
Well, something we forgot to say, which I can't believe we forgot to say, is that Marnie is knitting Desi a scarf.
Right, and it's insane that we didn't bring that up,
And
by
it's
the way.
insane that
I
we
was
didn't
thinking
bring that up.
I'd be like, I love FaceTime before it was real FaceTime.
I know.
Yeah,
Skype.
There was
Skype.
Zoom comedy jokes happening a decade
Yeah.
before we knew.
So ahead of its time, as usual. Lena Dunham ahead of her time.
Exactly.
Making pandemic era Zoom jokes.
Literally, well, that's why like everyone was taking selfies at one point, but no one had a word for it.
Yeah.
So it's called self-portrait. And then we kind of put a label on it. And then people were like, we created a new art form. But it was around forever. Cobra Snake had tried it.
Yeah.
Right, and I saw Priscilla, and they're taking selfies.
Really?
Literally.
And that was like the 50s or something.
I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know. I haven't seen it.
You don't need to. It's kind of just about like, what if a girl didn't have a personality and all that happened to her was being groomed? It's like, oh, I have to watch 3 hours of
and we
this?
need to tell that story.
Yeah, and it was like feminist power, and I was like, I'm actually just sad.
Yeah, that actually sounds really unfortunate.
It's my teen years.
Oh God! Oh no! We have such an important question to ask.
Girl, what girl are you?
It feels so good to hear it sort of screamed at me in real time. And what a question it is. I am Hannah. Obviously.
We guessed.
Yeah.
We guessed.
And so wait, can you talk about why you would say that?
Because you're blogger extraordinaire.
In our intro, we were kind of like, Rayne actually lives the life that Hannah wished she had, which is where she writes online and people like it.
I wish Hannah had Substack.
Well, this is something that I'm maybe going to talk about later, is like about how in the modern day, like Hannah would be ripping it on Substack.
Literally.
But
it's kind of like when a porn star like got into porn before OnlyFans.
yeah.
And it's like, Lana Rhoades, you could have really been a girl boss.
You could have had everything.
Well,
Yeah.
30% of
instead you
Substack
have
content
nothing.
now is about girls.
Yeah. And it's so true.
It's like anytime we reach out to somebody who has a Substack, they have multiple essays about girls already on their catalog.
yeah. And I think it's like, yeah, you understand that when you're on Substack that you're engaging with the girls mythology,
Community.
with the girls
Exactly.
community. I like am so a Hannah that it's really difficult, obviously. And I mean, I think that's what's so wonderful about Lena Dunham's writing, and like what is like uncomfortable about girls sometimes is like you watch the show and you're like, oh my God, like I am like that. Like you see all these things reflected in you that are maybe uncomfortable. But I feel like something that is so Hannah about me is that whenever I see those ugly parts of myself, it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I'm just like, yeah, that's what I'm like, and it's awesome.
Right. You're like, and I should write about this.
And I should write about that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I was like, I should metabolize this through my art that everyone will surely want to read. Something that happened to me recently, actually, and this just, I think, proves so succinctly that I am, unfortunately, a Hannah, is I was at a party and this like guy comes up to me and we're like chatting, and he says like he's kind of coked out or something, and he's like, you know, like you really remind me of Hannah from Girls. And I was like, oh well, like that's not so nice, like
Oh, hey, that's actually bullying me.
oh, so you don't like me that much? And then he said, and this is real, he said, no, you don't understand, I want to fuck Hannah from Girls so bad. And I was like, okay. And he was like, yeah, I always pause the screen when she has her shirt off and I jack off to her tiny tits. He said this to me. And I'm like, well, thank you.
It didn't get better, and it didn't get better.
It didn't get
You're
better.
like, okay, I'm not being bullied, I'm being assaulted.
I'm being propositioned in a really strange way.
Yeah.
But so like, first of all, he identified something that was Hannah in me. And then I was like, you know what? I'm flattered. I was
Right.
like, you've charmed me. And then...
And that's actually your boyfriend right now.
and yeah, we're dating and we're together.
Whoa,
And
he's
then-
an Adam. You found an Adam.
But just wait, because then I was telling this story to my friend and she was like, oh my God, wait, like who was this? And I like said his name and she was like, oh, he has a long-term girlfriend. So the fact that this happened to me, that I was called a Hannah from Girls at a party, then sort of sexually propositioned about it, then in an offensive way, the fact that I found it flattering, but then found out that he actually had a long-term girlfriend and he was doing it for sport and didn't actually want me, all the most Hannah thing that could ever happen to anyone.
That was a script.
It's a script.
You actually wrote an episode.
God.
yeah. Lena Dunham wrote that.
Yeah.
So that was very humbling. I feel like he's probably going to see this. It's
Well,
okay. Don't worry.
Hey.
Hey.
I will say, I was in an interview literally yesterday. In the middle of the interview, the person's looking at my resume and they're like, girls. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, do you mean? And then like we went past it and then she comes back. She goes, wait, is this Girls Like Hannah? I was like, yeah, it's Girls Like Hannah. She's like, oh my God, that is my favorite show of all time.
Girls
I
Like
love
Hannah.
Hannah so much. Anytime I put a dress on, I feel fat on it. I tell my boyfriend, you know what? If Hannah can do it, so can I. And I think we're in the middle of an interview right now. All love, miss you so much. Come over to my place. We need
That's
to talk.
so awesome.
I want to queer eye her so bad. I need to give her a haircut through the telephone after she said
Yeah.
that sentence to me. I need to give her a bob.
Just give her sort of a tutorial through the phone about where to put the scissors. Yeah. Also, this is like honestly a really sad and beautiful story, but we all know, of course, like this is maybe my favorite line in all of Girls.
I know what you're about to say. But you say it. Okay. I actually don't know.
Because it would be crazy if you did know. But like what I think is like the best line in all of Girls is like the episode where Hannah's talking about like what would happen if she died or what would happen if Adam died. And she's like, well, I'd have to like take some time off work or something. And then Adam says like, if you died, the world would blur. I wouldn't know what a tree was. I think that's like the most romantic line ever written. Like, I think it's so beautiful. And when I was going through my breakup this summer, after we had broken up, like I called my ex-boyfriend like a month later. We were like catching up and I was like, hey, like, is everything okay? Like, you sound like, you know, like things are kind of rough. And he was like, I don't know what a tree is.
Did he make that up on the spot?
No, he was referencing the Girls episode because he knew it was like my favorite line.
Oh, he's a manipulator.
No. No, that's so sweet, but also manipulative.
He was so sweet.
You're like, I didn't think you guys were going to react like that. I take it back.
Maybe that's he was being manipulative.
That's actually really like sweet and poetic, but also it would pull at my heartstrings in a way where I'm like, let me heal, actually.
Yeah, it pulled at my heartstrings, and it was also like, why are you as a man? Like, you know what I mean?
This is exactly something I would say to someone if they told me. I would leverage this, of course. So I do empathize with him, and I know exactly where he's coming from.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait, Evan, what girl are you this week?
I mean, there's not so many to pick from, but I'm definitely Elijah when he's like, scissor! That's what everyone wants to see when they're in a blue goo fighting each other. I'm like I'm running around parties all the time with my digital camera and being like, this is a sapphic camera only. I'm only doing sapphic photography on this tonight.
So you. You're like, and someone needs to be a lesbian quick. Someone decide. Someone decide.
Just wake it up.
The way I ride for lesbians, because my college experience, there was no gay friend groups. There was only individual gays.
Yeah.
So the way I latched onto the lesbian community for my 4.5 years of college shaped me. I know a lot about crafts.
Yeah.
We did a lot of crafts.
A lot of crochet.
Really? Like paper mache, actually.
Paper mache, okay.
We'd watch like VR porn together, which is actually the most lesbian way to watch porn if you check it out. Like, the way I probably knew more about lesbian sex and gay sex for a solid 3 years of my life because of the community I found myself in.
That's actually really beautiful. Well, I mean, lesbians are like incredible. They're the best people in the world.
But all my friends were going, I would like not see my friends for 3 days at a time because they're going on 72-hour dates. I was like, oh, we had plans, but I'm so glad you got to the Children's Museum, the Noma Museum, the Sculpture Garden, and got to hang out in some girl's van for 7 days. It's ridiculous. I lost half my friend group for half the week because they were like gallivanting around New Orleans with their new lesbian crush.
And so in that way, you're like Elijah.
In that way, I'm always encouraging lesbian behavior, even if it's not called for. Is that good or bad? But I don't mean it ever sexually.
Well, I guess it depends.
It's probably problematic.
I think it's only problematic if you're like, if you're like one of those people who's like encouraging straight girls to like kiss each other for sport. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know when,
like, you're being Alex Murdoch's therapist.
But like
whenever
even then,
Elijah's doing it in this episode, that's the exact way I do it.
Yeah, well then you're totally golden.
Okay, perfect.
But even if you were to encourage straight girls to kiss each other for sport, it's only unethical because like you're encouraging their evil behavior.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's actually the whole role of gay. I know my place and I fill the role. I'm an actor. IBD. Okay.
What girl are you this week?
Sorry, Amelia.
Yeah, I'm like begging you to host.
Girl, what girl are you?
Oh my god, thank you for asking. I'm just the one scene of Hannah having a bat fly in and then being like and then like running out and being like, no one's here to help me, I have to go through this alone. And then being like upset and moving my ass and my blankets to the bathroom and being like, I hate this.
I know. And when she has to like sleep in a pile on her bathroom floor,
poor girl.
I would say
you really feel for her.
Where Shoshana's watching Glee.
Oh, and I
they
pick
get a
up the phone
call.
And I'm like, fuck this.
Wait, I think it's Scandal.
Is it Scandal?
It's Scandal. I watched it twice because I thought she was saying Puck and Quinn.
I thought she said Puck and Quinn.
But she's saying Huck and Quinn.
Oh.
I was like, I need to figure out who this is, and then I never researched it. So I'm really thankful that you did the work.
I researched it and I looked it up,
okay,
and
perfect.
They are watching Scandal according to Entertainment Weekly.
I've never seen Scandal, so that's I actually had to like review a scene in it for a class once.
It's Shonda Rhimes, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's Shonda.
That's what's it called? Pope something. Pope?
Olivia Pope.
Yeah. And she's like, it's like the pilot ends with her being like, I'm making out with the guy you shouldn't make out with.
Yeah.
The president.
Oh, yeah. the president.
The president.
The guy you shouldn't make out with.
Yeah.
I do feel also something that, because I was talking to my friends about this, like trying to figure out what girl I am. And
thank you for doing homework.
You're like, I'm actually preparing for some work later this week.
Well, because the thing is that I could say I was preparing for work, but also I was getting all my friends to talk about me and my personality, which is sort of my favorite thing to do. So it was really a two birds, one stone. My friend said that she thinks some people think I'm a Jessa. Like I feel
people
like
are perceiving Jessa in you.
Like I think there are like some like bottom of the barrel men who have seen me as the way that Jessa is perceived.
Right, but we actually saw a bottom of the barrel man approach you and call you a Hannah.
Well, actually, he's a really nice guy, so and I'm sure he's wonderful to his beautiful girlfriend.
You're like, he's listening.
Well, in therapy, they always tell you to describe yourself through your friend's perspective, because actually how your friends describe you is a more accurate description of yourself than how you actually perceive yourself. Yeah. So it's actually an exercise of identity you're going through as well.
Yeah, 100%.
If my therapist ever asked me that, I would just be like, they think I'm a bitch and a slut and a whore and should kill myself. Just like going back to like
so Jessa.
What I would
think. But I think also, like, I feel like everyone always talks about how no one's really a Jessa. But I think that you can only be a Jessa through other people's eyes. This is my theory that I'm working on. Like, I think that there are a lot of people who like other people see them like a Jessa or something. And I think the reason why Jessas can only be perceived but can never be like a true Jessa is because the whole character of Jessa is so based on like how Lena Dunham clearly perceived Jemima Kirk. You know what I mean?
That is so good.
Like, I feel like so much of Jessa's character is like Lena Dunham's projections and like Lena Dunham's like...
That's why people are always complaining like Jessa's so underwritten, but it is like Jessa is literally conceived out of like Lena's projection of perceiving this cool girl, rather than like knowing what that girl is.
Totally.
It's like we needed Jemima in the writer's room.
We need Jemima to step into the writer's room,
because it's like Judd won't know either. Judd won't know Jessa either.
No, Judd has no idea. Judd can't handle a bad bitch.
No.
I think you're so, because the one person in my life who I think is a Jessa, it's only because through my eyes, and every time we bring up Jessa, I always think about this one girl in my head. It's like, I don't think she would
really quick.
You wouldn't know.
Oh,
she's like an old friend before I knew Amelia, but like comes from a lot of generational wealth, like is deeply disturbed, but like really hot, pretty things always fall her direction.
Yeah,
but like hates every aspect of that happening to her.
Yeah.
And it's like, did I ever get enough time to actually know her story intimately enough to actually figure out what kind of girl she was?
Yeah.
Because I think she would describe herself as a Shoshana, but I don't think anyone else in her life would.
Yeah. And that's so sad. And that's the tragedy of Jessa. I feel like there's so many points where Jessa really is like the saddest character because there's so much that you don't see. Like, I feel like for me, you have to like imagine her inner world a lot of the time. And you just see like the way that she's perceived by other people and even sort of meta, like perceived by the script and like by the writers and stuff. So maybe in that way, sometimes I feel like a Jessa, misunderstood.
Ooh.
There it is.
Well, there it is.
There it is.
No one could even say another thing on that matter.
All right. It is ultimately time to lean into Lena.
Oh my God. Is this not the most fun episode of all time?
This is so fun. I mean, what I love so much about this episode is that, I mean, first of all, it's such a Hannah episode. Like, it's just
a Hannah.
It's
Hannah.
so kind of cinematic Hannah.
Yeah. It's like it's like one of those episodes. Like, it's like the episode where she like stays in the doctor's house. Like, it's one of those like real Lena moments
where we really like see her alone, I guess.
Yeah.
Or rather like see her painted through the silence rather than through her interactions with others.
Totally.
Yeah.
And something that I think is really interesting about this episode is that, I mean, obviously it deals with like meta critiques of Lena Dunham, like when she's in the writers workshop, like all
and
of
they're like, you're actually bad for women.
Yeah, they're like, you're bad for women, you're like a spoiled brat who like wants to be oppressed, like you like misappropriate feminism to like justify, like it's all criticisms that Lena has received. So that was like super interesting. And I think it was like done in a way that, I mean, there's points in this episode where it really almost veers into like parody, like how maligned she is by everyone around her and like how cruel people are to her and how awkward she is and how exaggerated her like mismatches with the world around her. And when I was watching it the second time, like when I was watching it the first time, I was kind of like, oh, like this is almost silly, like it's so comical, like how like antagonistic people are being to her, like how much she doesn't fit into this place. And for a second I was almost like bad writing, but then when I watched it the second time, I really engaged with it with this lens of like, it's almost like she's an unreliable narrator. Like this is like what the world feels like to her. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, she did an amazing job of like portraying either external voices that are critiquing her and her own internal voices that critique her. And like it is done through this like naivete lens of Hannah in this show and being like, no, actually, let me speak in here. Actually, let me say something. And like, I think there's so many times where she wants to say something. It's like, actually, you're not actually understanding my sarcasm or how meta this is and what I'm actually talking about.
Totally.
And I think it's also her reckoning when she's in season 4 of the show and like having her own kind of realization about like, oh, I have to like kind of let these things go. People that resonate with my work will be there and listen to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really portrayed so well. It's like no one gets it and then people get it.
Yeah.
It is like, as the writer of the show, she could write the narrative where it's like her like justifying everything.
Yeah.
But instead she chose to like just paint like the emotional like impact it is on like her, where she's like, I feel like nobody gets me, but rather than trying to convince them to get it, I'm just like highlighting and almost like making fun of myself in a way.
Yeah. I mean, because the thing that's so interesting is like the piece that she reads like is kind of bad.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like she's not portraying herself. She's not portraying Hannah in this episode as like a totally misunderstood and like maligned writer. Like she's painting her as somebody whose work is like legitimately flawed and who's like reckoning with the flaws in her work for the first time.
Yeah.
Which is like a super interesting choice. But something that I do think is true though is that piece today would do numbers.
Literally.
You know?
Yeah.
I think about the piece so much since like I've been thinking about this piece for the last 4 years of my life about someone punching you for fun and then getting to write about it. I'm like, oh, in your 20s, a big part of it is that you'll ask someone to punch you for fun when you're on Quaaludes.
Yeah.
I actually thought that would be part of my life.
It's so like the recent respect put on My Year of Rest and Relaxation.
Literally.
Where it's like, actually, this is so good and valid. Where it's like, I feel like when I read it, everybody was like, fuck you. Like, you self-obsessed little whore.
I think we love self-obsession right now, though.
I know. I think
It's
we're
so
leaning
trendy.
into it. Especially, like, I mean, the hyper-individuality of, like, our generation is so, like, enthralled with any media that, like, justifies that.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that we're, like, we love it.
This is one of the most iconic episodes of Girls.
Yeah.
It's pretty
I would venture to
iconic.
say.
I mean, because it just so like directly deals with girls as a construct. Like it so like directly engages with like the public and usually like, I mean, the show's always self-aware, which is something people don't understand about it, obviously, is that like the whole show is Lena like reckoning in a very self-aware way with like who she is and how she's perceived and like the things about her that are like unlikable. But this episode I feel like was so iconic because it really was just like almost a direct conversation like with the audience and like with the critics.
Well, and it's even to the point where it's like in the earlier seasons, it's such a critique of like oneself and their own kind of like mental battle too, of like what is the difference between her perception of herself and like how she actually is and like bridging the gap. And this is kind of, I think, even a more external lens, like where she's kind of bringing the viewpoint of what is the media saying about her? What is the real dialect going on at the time?
Yeah.
I mean, she received so much hate during this time and like who's kind of resonating with her work. I don't know. It's a kind of, it's a beautiful story. Actually, I do know. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And I think she really definitely sort of like crafts, she like walks this line between like exploring like the legitimate ways that she's sort of maligned and like the legitimate emotional impact of the lack of understanding around her work. But then I feel like she also really interestingly like brings in and critiques like the like victim complex, like the victim complex that Hannah has and like the victim complex that probably she has too, where like I feel also throughout the episode Hannah is like just like almost like comically at odds with all of these people, and like they're talking to her in a way that like real people don't actually talk to other people, you know, like even if you brought a shitty story into a writer's workshop, like real people wouldn't actually talk to you like that.
Not all of them.
Not all of them.
Like the silence was deafening when they were like, and anybody have any like positive things?
Any positive things to say? Like it was done with like classically done so well, like with like the sort of like gut wrenching awkwardness and stuff. But I think that it made it really interesting to think like, oh, like this is how Lena sees the world. Like this is how Hannah sees the world. Like that everybody is like so comically out to get them to this extent. And I feel like Lena's like aware of that. And the episode was also sort of about kind of like this victim complex or this like this feeling of being,
it's like her bike was the one that was stolen. Like she did have to have a bat fly into her home. She did have to be locked out.
Yeah.
Like even the Amex card thing, I think it's like there's so many beats early on where it's like she's trying to like freak out about like, oh my god, the apartment's so cheap, and the realtor is like, I don't get your vibe.
Yeah.
Like, do you want the place?
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, people
You're being
maybe
a weird
like
bitch.
aren't really getting my whole thing here.
Yeah.
And then it's like she sees somebody have an amazing interaction with like the customer service guy, and she's like, I'm gonna kill it too.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I hate your whole thing, by the way.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay, well, call Amex.
Yeah, call Amex.
Yeah.
And she's still so herself. And by the way, like I feel like it bears saying that she didn't have to get that haircut. Like if you wanted people to like you in Iowa, like you didn't have to get the fuck ass bob.
It was
This
so
has hurt every single guest of this podcast.
I know everybody comes on and they're like, the haircut was distracting. And it is. I mean, even when I'm rewatching Broad City and the bangs Abby has in the early seasons, it's so distracting.
It's tough. It's really tough.
And like side bangs really hurt us.
And like I understand it's hard. Like another reason why I'm a Hannah is like we do have a similar face shape, and and that's like something that I deal with and I think about all the time. And it's like hard to find a really good haircut, and you can see her struggle with it in real time. But like the bob, it's I don't know how they didn't catch it. You know, it's not the answer.
I wonder if it's just a mistake of the time.
Yeah.
There's nothing we could do. It's something so ingrained in the zeitgeist that it was like, she can't even fight that. Lena Dunham, someone who's such a contrarian, had to give in to something bad too.
Yeah.
Well, I also really want to highlight her conversations with the two women she had in this episode.
Yes.
Which is a drunk party goer and then the other writer in the workshop.
The one with the bangs?
The other one with the bangs. No, not the one with the bangs.
Like the one where she's like, you're a victim of abuse.
Oh, the headband,
right?
Yeah,
the victim of abuse blondie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, those are two really distinct interactions of her like,
well, I think the like party one was like an amazing writing technique of like how to use the party and that interaction to explain like where Hannah is feeling about Adam.
Yeah, totally.
Like being like, oh, well, you're not in the same place, so it's like it doesn't matter and everything's fine. Get over it, girl. And it's like mainly her telling herself that.
Totally.
And then being like, well, at least I'm not like broken up like this bitch.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm actually really wise because I'm 25.
Yeah, and you also really see her like. Yeah, it's so well written because you also are really seeing her engage with this like, well, I'm an adult here, like, and she has this kind of complex about it the whole episode too, that she's like 25 and this back in university, and I think she's.
Wouldn't you though? Like if you were at a party and you're 25
100%.
and you're at a frat party where almost half the kids are teens, half the kids are just legally drinking.
Yeah,
I'd be like, I'm either like, you have to either dive so deep into it that you're the patriarchy or not the matriarchy of this whole party.
Yeah.
And or you are in full embarrassment.
Yeah.
And the one time I went to a party with teenagers when I was 24 at SUNY Purchase, I just went for it.
Yeah.
And I was giving everyone advice there. I was being LinkedIn.com. The way I was connecting and giving informational interviews to everyone there. And she's doing the same thing. Thank God.
I know. I love it. And when they are leaving the party and Elijah's like, y'all are pussies.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, we get it. Like, we've been here.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, her advice is like not so good, but I also thought it was kind of a beautiful moment from Hannah. Like,
she's trying to help a girl out.
She's trying to help a girl out with some tough love.
And immediately cuts her in line for the bathroom.
Yeah. And that's Hannah.
It's classic Hannah.
And yeah, I mean, I think you also really see like her psychology, like how she's feeling going back to school. Like, I think she's really feeling this like stagnation or this like arrested development or this like she knows this kind of was the only step forward, but I think it probably feels a little bit like a step backwards sometimes because like everything's moving forward in New York, and
she feels like she started like her like not having friends the first night and like going it alone is so like her freshman year in a dorm being like, I don't have my friends yet.
Yeah. And I think like, say what you will about Hannah, and you know, they all have so many struggles, but she kind of like had a rhythm in New York. Like she had things that worked, and she and I think there also is something about New York, I say as somebody who just moved here, where like just being like in New York, you feel like you're doing something. Like, you know what you mean? You know what I mean? Like, even if everything's like so shitty, you're like, but I'm in New York. Like, a lot of people can't make it here. Right. And I think that like you see Hannah like really hold on to that throughout the seasons or something.
Yeah, and it's like Iowa, it's like the only thing she has for herself there is her writing. Yeah. And so then she has to grapple with, it's not me trying to be a writer making it in New York. Yeah. It's me being a writer. And getting like feedback that hurts. Yeah, totally.
Because I think, so much of Hannah being a writer in New York famously is her like not writing.
Exactly.
But her like engaging with this mythology of like her being a writer or being like a young woman. A girl
in the city that can do coke on a Tuesday.
Exactly. And she's like, and this is what being a writer is living this life in New York. But suddenly she's in Iowa, and being a writer is suddenly about writing. And I think it shatters her world a little bit. And especially, and I think she starts thinking like, oh my God, I'm 25. Like, I'm 25, like in Iowa, like 25-year-olds are getting married. Like, you know what I mean? I think there's so many moments in the episode where you really see like how destabilizing this is to her whole world and her identity.
Totally. Whoa. Which is why she has to call her mom and ask about suicide.
Yeah.
And for parents, I'm like, was suicide not a generational conversation for our parents?
She said her mom seemed really chill.
Her mom was chill as fuck.
If I ever said it to my mother, the way she would I would either have to leave the state of Iowa and never set foot in that state again, or my mom would have to come live in my way bigger apartment.
I said it to my mom, and now she's sending me like weird Facebook reels of little puppy dogs being like, don't worry, be happy.
Well, I famously dropped out of school due to a mental health crisis.
No, tell us everything.
Well, I was in university for 4 months.
Sorry, I'm moving on this couch so much. I don't know how to sit.
No, I feel the same.
Sorry to interrupt.
I feel the same. Don't worry at all. I was in college for 4 beautiful months, for 4 horrible, horrible months. In Vancouver. And then I had sort of a protracted mental health crisis. There were a lot of factors. I like thought that God was talking to me. Oh my God. Yeah, I like wanted to kill myself a lot. I know. And he said I was really special. And he said in a couple years, like, it's going to be really cool to be Catholic. So you're going to want to hold on to this.
Oh my God.
And then, I had to drop out. And then I lived by myself in Vancouver for 4 years. And it was really horrible. And my parents...
What did you do there?
A lot of things. Right when I dropped out of school, I became financially independent right away. So I just kind of was I was on government assistance for a while. And then I started writing. I mean, literally, that's why I started writing, is because I didn't really have a solid address, and I just needed something I could do to make money while I was so crazy, because I wasn't sleeping. I didn't have, not to get too into the weeds, but that's literally why I started writing, is that I just needed something where I could make $200.
And God said you're special.
And God said I was so special, in between telling me to kill myself. But all this to say that, my parents got a little freaked out about that whole thing. And so literally years later, I'm so fine now, by the way, but years later I would call my dad on the phone, and we'd just have a conversation. And one time I was having a bad week or something, and I called my dad on the phone, and I was no, I'm totally fine, don't worry. And then the next day Vancouver and Toronto are very far away. In case our American listeners don't know, it's a New York to LA style commute.
Wow.
And my dad showed up at my door in Vancouver as a surprise. And he had flown all the way from Toronto. And I was like, oh my God, like, why are you here? And he said, because I saw sadness in your eyes.
Oh my God, that's so sweet.
He's a really good dad. He's a little crazy. He's kind of crazy like a girl.
He saw sadness in your eyes and flew across the country.
Yeah, flew across the country to
on Air Canada.
On so Air sweet. Canada. Yeah, it was
my dad
really...
did that for my brother too. We have to connect our dads.
Yeah, they have to Kiki. It's like, does your dad have a lot of friends? Because a lot of dads don't. Yeah, no.
Like, my dad has no friends, but will ride or die for me. Thank God. And he's really emotionally available.
Yeah, and like that's why I feel like we need to start setting up our dads like to be friends because like
he has friends now. I forgot. It's a new update.
Oh, thank God.
Like
he joined the club.
He joined a golf club and now he's made friends.
Dads are so lonely. It's really
so beautiful. It's a big issue. Yeah. But all that to say, like, if I called my parents and I was like, I'm feeling suicidal, like, there would be police at my door and my parents would be in the building.
Right. And Susie's like, is that her name?
Dude, my mom did the same thing for my aunt. My aunt, 75 years old, one time mentioned on my phone that she was like she was like, I'm just going to end it all. But like, she didn't mean it. But my mom was like, she's in New Jersey. My mom's in New York, famously passport, we were saying, Instagram bio. So instead of actually crossing the border, she called the police to my aunt's house.
That's horrible.
Meanwhile, Loren is like, Tad actually has a big word coming up. So we're going to hang up on you.
We're going to hang tight. But I really liked how Loren was like, yeah, I feel that way too. Like sometimes sometimes I want to drop my baby.
Yeah. She's like, and I have what's that term? Intrusive thoughts. I have intrusive thoughts too. Get over it.
Yeah.
Which I think is just like further highlighting like Hannah's experience of feeling like antagonized by it.
She's gonna feel this way in like a season or two as well. And the next season, she feels exactly how Hannah's feeling.
Yes.
So it's really cool to see that switch go on.
Well, Hannah's relationship with her mom is like one of the most beautiful and like subtly well done parts of the show. Because you just like, I love all these little moments where you just like see how much they have in common, like how similar their brains are in so many ways.
Like, they aren't connecting on their similarities.
Yeah, totally. Because I think Loren, is that her name?
Yeah.
Because Loren has like, I think figured out how to process it in such a different way, or like has like figured out how to have a life in such a different way, and I maybe like feels this resentment towards Hannah, or this like,
I think there's a freedom in Hannah that Loren resents.
Totally.
Because Loren is like made herself feel comfortable in her decisions by being like, well, optically everything is like, she says in like the Flow episode, like, my marriage is in order and my life is intact.
Yeah.
You know, like I think she really like holds it like exteriorly, like if everything's in line, things are together, whereas like Hannah is like interiorly, if everything's together, then everything's fine.
Well, I think one of the biggest differences between our parents and our generation is that there's no difference between our outside persona in a lot of areas and our inside persona. Like, we come home, we're almost the same exact person as we are in the outside world, where our parents, like, they go to a work setting,
they're a completely different person.
They're a completely different person, and they come home and then they get to take their mask off and they can just like be a completely different person. Where we're so continually one line.
We're at work like talking like we talk.
Literally.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually really way more confusing for us than it is for them, because they have such clear boundaries, and there's no boundaries in our personality, which is perceived as liberating, and why this show is like such a interesting watch, because it's like their first real generation that like blurred the boundaries and like made their like work lives and outside lives so close to their inner lives as well. So
but it also is so vulnerable.
It's so vulnerable.
Like, and it puts you in such a destabilized position so much of the time.
I think we haven't figured it out. Maybe we'll figure it out in 75 years. But right now we're going through the tribulations and trials of like trying to become one authentic self throughout life. And that's actually really hard, while the leading generation right now has a completely different understanding of it.
And we've built a personal online brand for ourselves since we were like 10.
And like authenticity is like,
don't remind me. Not my Facebook profile pictures.
Well, I think it's so interesting because I have a younger sister that's Generation Alpha, and you can already notice with that generation, like the difference between Gen Z and Millennials is that we have such a focus on like presenting heightened versions of ourselves on the internet and like the most real authentic us, but like in this like very like organized way, whereas like her generation does not want to, they want to be completely anonymous online. And there's like an it's fully avatar for them. They're like, I want to take this like entirely like I don't want anyone online to like know anything about like my day-to-day self in a way that like is so different from like us, because it's like everyone we know like wants everybody to know who we are so clearly.
Well, there was just like, I mean, our whole generation and like the millennial generation too, there was just this like sort of cultural fetish for like expressing yourself. Like there was like, that was like the biggest thing. It's like, now you can express yourself. And it was like, that was also like the frontier of like gay rights too. Like there were so, and feminism, like so many of these social issues were like distilled into just being able to express yourself. Like that was seen as like the greatest freedom and the greatest liberation was to just like put yourself out there and to put every part of yourself out there and to turn yourself into a brand and to be authentic and to be you. And that was really wonderful in some ways, obviously. But I think for a lot of people, it also like feels like a trap, or like has started to feel like a trap because the
Emma Chamberlainification.
Well, we're the first generation that can really like make your brand, like you're saying, into your business.
Yeah, your
in
whole
a way
life.
it wasn't seen before.
Yeah,
like you can become your personal entrepreneur just based off like what I mean.
You're like a Tana Mojo or something. Like you're literally building an empire off of like your authentic self, which is so more destabilizing than we thought it would be.
Yeah, it used to be something only comedians did. Yeah. And they all want to kill themselves.
Of course.
And the bod. I have to call my mom. She won't believe me for a second. Call the police here.
Should we talk about Elijah coming?
Love Elijah. There's not a single second that I haven't been fully obsessed with that man. He's the first gay person we had on TV to be a loser and own it and be amazing at the same time.
He's like, I feel like a loser in New York. I had to come. And then they literally get to throw it back to undergrad because they, of course, dated in college.
Yeah,
so
which we forget.
Yeah, we forget.
We forget all too often.
They're microdosing Oberlin together.
Yes. And I mean, I hate to come out with an opposing opinion or an alternate perspective, but something that I thought was so amazing about this episode is that there have been a lot of episodes where I didn't really connect with Elijah, like, which I know is like a shocking thing to say. And
I got shivers.
It was never, I know. Like maybe I should have said this earlier just so you guys knew where I stood.
We look at the YouTube analytics, there's a fall rate, like 100% fall rate.
You should have texted us before coming on.
No, let's hear it. You didn't connect with Elijah.
No, let's hear it.
I'm being like tried. I mean, it's like, and I don't stand by this. Like, I know he's an amazing character. Like, I like him. I love Andrew. I mean, come on, America's sweetheart. But just a lot of episodes, like, I never saw what everyone else saw in him. And I knew it was a personal problem. Like, I knew that I just couldn't see what everyone else was seeing. But this episode, man, I really saw it. Like, I was just like, first I was like, he's such a good friend. And like, obviously he has like, maybe a selfish element of him coming out, like leaving New York, coming to Iowa too. But it's also like Hannah needed that so bad. And he just knew exactly what to do to make her feel better. And I just loved watching their relationship. And also I was like, the acting is so good. He's such a treasure.
He is so talented.
He's so talented.
It's just shocking
in so many ways. Every single time. And I was also like, wait, he's hot.
I know.
His body really was on 10 in this episode.
Well, I have a question for you. Are you a Sex and the City fan?
I'm a huge Sex and the City fan.
I read Elijah in the first few seasons very Sex and the City coded.
Yeah.
And in this episode, he becomes a bit more girls coded.
That's really interesting.
Because he's a lot more like, there's an earnesty level that isn't necessarily, I think, perceived in early. Like there's some earnesty, but like here he's like fully like,
he's totally
everything
earnest.
bad. Yeah. I need to just have an escape from New York and like be raw and real for a second.
Yeah.
And especially since his breakup with Doyle, like we're seeing the character in such a new light. And throughout the rest of the seasons, like it is such a new light for Elijah.
I think Elijah really comes into his own in the next,
they
like
finally
this season
already
of the
gay
next one.
for girls.
It's totally, yeah. But yeah, I thought it was beautiful. I actually loved him jacking off the like not gay guy.
Oh, and I'm straight too.
Oh, and I'm straight. Yeah. And like,
I love that he's like, I want to have sex, and even though you're scared, I know what to say to make you be into it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, we're both straight. Don't worry.
And he was just so cool. Like he was like, any party where I'm there. Like
Yeah.
I was like, wait, I want to say stuff like that.
I want to
So
be that
like,
cool.
if I could
Yeah.
live through high school now, like I know exactly what I could say to like be so powerful.
Yeah.
It's like him living out that truth.
I did just read the book The Velvet Rage, which is all about like the gay shame and like the anger that a lot of gay people feel. And so when he did that to that guy upstairs, I was like, oh, this is a basis of shame on both sides. And you have to read the book, and I can't explain it now because I don't fully get it.
Well, this is like maybe a little vulnerable to share, but one of the reasons why I loved that scene is because like when I was like in the closet and stuff, it was literally my like dream that a girl would like do that to me. Like that like specific thing was like my whole, like for me to be like, no, I'm straight, and for her to be like, yeah, sure, we both are. Like that was literally like my, like that was my jack off material. Because
so
that was like the
fun.
only way that like I could metabolize it or something. So I really saw myself represented in that
Right, you
scene
really,
as well.
I love you, Elijah.
I love you, Elijah.
You're really exactly what's needed.
Yeah.
I think sometimes with the shame that you're talking about, like you just need someone to take the reins and like
Totally.
do it, because
Yeah.
it's like too hard for you to have to muster yourself to go through all those events. So
100%.
Elijah being such a dictating force,
Yeah.
and like, let's just do this, like you're gonna have your first gay experience, and like be comment, like just like doing that for that person.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's a little problematic, but it's also like that's exactly maybe what that person needed to. Who
Yeah.
knows? But I get what you mean. That's a real fantasy.
It's real as hell.
It's real as hell.
Love it. Love the immediate cut to Hannah deciding to be in a paint fight.
Yeah.
I-
Wrestling in blue.
I'm surprised Hannah went for it, honestly.
Yeah. No, like, I mean, you could really tell she's going through something and she's trying to like.
Really have fun. She's like, I cannot think about how everybody hates my Rayne. Let me become a Smurf. Whatever it takes. That's so sweet. That's where the episode kind of ends off, is them waking up and walking through the field, right?
Literally.
Wait, here's a question that I have that I can't remember. Is she still blue when they're walking through the field? Like, how does she get that stuff off of?
So we actually watched the Lena behind the scenes. So Lena was blue for 5 days after filming the scene.
Really?
Every time she showered, she's found blue in a new spot. But apparently when they actually filmed that scene, it's like they filmed the scene where they're fighting, and then she took a shower, and then she had to put back on the dress that they fought in. Like,
It was
Oh.
like frozen
So
because it's actually really cold out.
Whoa.
so she was like, it was like cold paint just on my body. And then like the idea was that she would still kind of have like paint in her hair when they did that overhead shot. But I guess the idea is like she did try and like clean it off at that house party.
Doesn't it make you have a lot of empathy for the Blue Man Group? I'm like watching, I'm like, those
It made me
poor
think of like
guys.
Alphabuzz on Broadway. I'm like, they are really going through
Yeah,
it.
I'm sure their life is so hard.
Well, it's
Apparently
just
they
a
have to
dra-
re-green themselves at halftime. At
Really?
halftime. Yeah, I love sports.
Very Iowa of you.
Yeah, trying to adjust to the culture.
I'm like trying to feel. I just did like drag maybe 3 weeks ago at this point, and there's still a little bit of glue in my hair from the
Really?
Louise glue, and I've been trying to get it out, and the only way for me to get it out is ripping it out of my head. Like that's my blue experience.
That's your blue experience.
Does that resonate with anyone?
Wait, we should have a new segment. What's your blue experience?
What's your blue experience? I mean, I would never have one because I hate having stuff on me.
Yeah.
Like, I would just never be in that pit because I have obsessive compulsive disorder. I hate having stuff on me.
Oh, and Hannah does too, so it's crazy she went in there.
Yeah. We're on a different vibe for sure in that way.
We need to talk about Marnie.
Oh.
Just really quick.
Okay, yeah,
Really
yeah.
quick, yeah. She's knitting a scarf.
She's knitting a scarf, and she's so in love with Desi, and in
It's so
the denial
sad.
phase
It's
of
so
breakup boot camp.
sad.
The
Yeah.
way she's like, I refuse to believe I'm the other woman. It's like, baby.
Babe, come on.
Get a grip.
And is this the episode where she's like, yeah, like Clementine has like an autoimmune disorder and like
Oh my
he
God.
can't break up with her or else she'll like
Oh no, it's not
No,
this.
that's coming up.
Oh, that's coming up. Sorry for the spoiler. Sorry. But yeah, like it was just like seeing the depths of her delusion. It's really sad. It's tough.
Also, and her really being like, and you're the one with the boy trouble, Hannah. Do not bring up Adam to me. And it's like, babe, you are down bad for Desi.
You're in the fucking trenches.
I think Hannah's actually fine.
She's doing fine. You're in the trenches for Cousin from The Bear.
Literally help.
it's very interesting to see like the weird note that Hannah and Adam left everything on. Like now Adam isn't calling Hannah. There's no real point of contact. They didn't really establish a plan. He didn't wake up from the bed when she was leaving. Yeah. It's like no one really was able to say anything. So everyone's feelings are so like left on feeling so unstable.
Totally. And it's like, it's so interesting that like even her friends are like, we're not going to tell you about Adam because like they didn't really break up.
They didn't break up. They were like, oh, we'll do long distance. We'll call 10 times a day. Yeah. And now they're not calling at all. And they're like, and also you can't ask about him in general. Yeah. It's like, okay.
Like, it's like if I were Hannah, maybe I would kill myself because it actually seems nightmarish.
It is interesting that we don't get a sense from Hannah that she's like panicked about that.
Yeah. Which is like, I wonder if it's just like simmering under the surface and like coming out in all these other ways.
She's like, I actually don't want to process that right now. Yeah. So I'm just going to like put that on the back burner until it really like is brought up to me. Yeah. Yeah.
But she does dig around.
By asking a question?
She's like, she wants to answer. And Marnie knows exactly what Hannah's going to ask for.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Which I also thought was like such a Marnie and Hannah moment. Like Marnie like just knowing like I feel like it's so symbolic of their friendship that Marnie like knows exactly what Hannah needs and is like actually so in tune with her and like knows her so well, but also is like kind of mean.
Yeah.
Classic. Is there any other mo? We don't even need to talk about Jessa and She's on it. It's too much.
They're watching Scandal.
We're watching Scandal. Shout out to those girls. I'm glad Jessa is with Shosh. Yeah. Because, you know, she was stressed last episode about Hannah leaving. So she has one girl. And it is her cousin.
And it is her damn cousin. But sometimes a cousin is the best friend you can have.
Not my experience, but
really?
Shout out.
My cousin's my best friend.
Do you love your cousin? Yeah. I get so jealous when people love their cousin.
Are they in New Jersey?
No. No. Shout out to my cousin Seb, who lives in Montreal. He's my best friend.
Oh, yeah. Wait, I love it.
Now it's time.
Girl, get your Glock. It's rapid fire time. What's the perfect Scrabble word?
Your own name.
Should you move to Iowa to start the revolution?
No.
What would you do if a bird flew into your home?
I would call someone else to deal with it. And I would blog about it.
Yes.
Yeah, I would make it a symbol.
Does the smell of your hair matter?
Yes.
Was that a bird or a bat?
It was a bat.
Oh.
Are you going to go creaking with your friends?
No. Never.
And why is Marnie mad at you?
Because of my general personality, I would say. Yeah. She would not like me.
No,
she likes Hannah.
She likes Hannah.
Yeah, she likes, but it's like, I feel like she and Hannah are just tied together by their history.
And that is the truth.
And that's the damn truth. Like, if they met today, would they be friends?
No, and I guess that's like where we end. But we'll have to wait till season 2.
We'll have to wait to see.
Last segment of the podcast. That outfit in Brooklyn.
This is kind of where we compare Brooklyn then versus Brooklyn now.
And so little of this episode happened in Brooklyn, but I still feel like there are a lot of depths to plumb.
Oh, literally.
Let's plumb them. That's the plumb. Now you're using language I don't know about.
Well, I think the first note we have to go off on is that Scrabble's now Wordle.
Yeah. Scrabble's 100% Wordle. Or like, there's like a new New York Times game that everyone's on.
Yeah.
Like Connections
literally.
Or something. Everyone's doing that one.
I clicked onto that yesterday. It's crazy you brought it up just now.
Something that I was thinking about is that in Brooklyn today, I feel like there's a lot of different characters that would just be leaning a lot harder into ethical non-monogamy. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. There would be so much more language around what was going on.
There would be so much more language around what was going on. Marnie would be reading The Ethical Slut, and she'd be like trying to get Desi to read The Ethical Slut and like trying to establish like a polycule.
Literally.
Hannah and Adam would also be like, we're like primary coupled but
nesting partners
but open. Like there would just be so much more discourse around it, and it would make it a lot more unbearable somehow.
Yeah, it would be way more painful.
How would you even write that show?
How would you even write that show?
And that's why it hasn't been done just yet.
And that's what's so funny is that there's like no show about polyamorous people, even though you would think that like there should be, but there isn't, just because I think it's like
greenlighting bushwickers anymore.
It might be hard to write conflict, even though there is so much conflict. It's like, but also you can just be like, and I'm gonna date someone new.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Right.
And also, like,
that's maybe offensive for poly community. What I just said.
Yeah, and let's see if people reach out.
And let's see what they say. I was about to say maybe some more offensive stuff to the poly community, so let's move on.
It is funny because you're allowed to punch up or punch down at the poly community as much as you want for some reason.
Because it's like, it's sort of like punching up because at the end of the day, they're allowed to have a lot more sex than you.
Oh, that's true.
You know what I mean? So it's like...
And like they can get away with things that you can't.
Yeah, they can get away with things that you can't. And so like it's okay to make a little bit of fun of them because like they're probably having crazy communicative sex.
Yeah.
I do think it became popularized too through the furry movement a little bit. Like people kind of learned about it through furries. And fetishization. So it's like also when people see it, furries is kind of one topic that's like it's a marginalized community that you can still make fun of.
Yeah.
My sister has other thoughts. My 11-year-old sister's like getting into furries.
Oh,
and
cool.
It's like, how do we help her?
Yeah, that's a really tough one because like the other thing is that at the end of the day, a lot of furries are so happy.
She is like, I'm expressing myself and I'm having so much fun. Why is everyone mad and worried about me? And I'm like, you bring up an amazing point. I need to check my like bias.
Yeah, and I'm really curious, like maybe you can't talk about this, but like what kind of furry does she like?
She's a dinosaur. I can show you the mask she made.
That's so awesome.
It's really sweet. She's doing like...
She sounds so cool.
She's literally fighting back the haters online and it's like, I'm the hater. She's texting me and she's like, how come you don't like furries? And I'm like, fuck.
You're the hater in her own damn family.
Yeah, it's
sometimes
not
your
right.
biggest hater is your own sister.
Yeah, literally. She's gonna write a scathing article.
I think a lot of times your haters your sibling.
A lot of the time.
Oh god, you're punching out your non-binary sibling.
I also think in Brooklyn today, Marnie's craft of choice would not be a knitted scarf.
I will say I know 5 girls that are knitting scarves right now.
And actually, yeah, maybe it's like just coming back. Like I was thinking maybe she'd be crocheting.
There's me hoods.
Oh, you know
crochet.
what? They're crocheting.
She'd be making like a fucking balaclava.
She's making a balaclava. Everyone's making either a red hood or a balaclava.
Yeah, like or like a little bonnet, one of those little bonnets.
I know, but I want
one little bonnets. I know, I really want one too,
bad.
even though I really don't think it would work for my face shape.
It would. It'd be so cute.
You could pull off a bonnet.
You could pull off a bonnet.
She might also be making like pottery that's like ironically ugly on purpose.
Right.
You know
I don't
what
think
I
she
mean?
has that foresight. I think no West Village girl, aka Marnie living in Chinatown, would be making ugly pottery on purpose.
True.
I think the crafts that they like are crocheting, but they saw someone in Brooklyn do it first.
Yeah.
So now they're doing it.
Yeah.
And or for some reason, collaging is so popular.
Collaging is so in.
It's so in and it's for everyone.
And she would be collaging.
She would be collaging.
collaging. And it would be all like thematic to Desi.
Yeah.
Hours before you came. We're like
Yeah.
Us collaging.
What kind of a weird freak would be collaging at a time like this?
So fucked up when people like just print out a bunch of pictures and like stick them together and think it's art.
collage.
And I like forgot about Charlie.
We'll see him again.
We'll see him again.
Well, one time. I do really want to talk about a college party. And what do we think the nature of a college party?
Do you think college parties are like that anymore? Low-key, I don't.
I don't think so. I think the big part of a party where it's not Greek life, but people are still heavily binge drinking. It's like you're gonna have a weird activity. Like the blue paint does resonate.
Yeah.
The amount of weird
Cigarette
activities. Cigarette race, blue paint.
We're begging this party to be the Twinks versus Dolls party.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's like in the modern day, they would be at a Twinks versus Dolls party.
At Iowa, Twinks versus Dolls.
I saw one of the dolls from Twinks vs. Dolls last night, and they walked by, and then 10 seconds later, my brain registered. I'm like, doll from Twinks vs. Dolls.
Doll.
Third place.
I love your work. It's perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, is there
anything other things you can think of?
Collect calls, but it's like boring.
What would Shosh and Jessa be watching?
Right.
The Curse.
They'd be watching The Curse.
Right?
What?
I actually think they both be on their iPhones watching TikToks, but on the same bed.
And that's actually pretty true.
Would
That's
Jessa
actually
be on
really good.
TikTok?
Jessa would be on Instagram Reels.
Jessa
or
would be
like
on
YouTube Shorts or
Instagram
something.
Reels.
Accidentally.
Like, yeah, she'd be like, she would like stumble across it and be like, what is this? You know what I mean? And she'd be like sort of
be
ironically
monologuing like blah 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 blah
Yeah.
duh. And she's like, okay.
No, she would
Okay.
like some of the most basic mothers on earth like videos, but she'd earnestly really like them. just
Yeah.
because they're so stupid and raw.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Like she would be like really talking down on like all the like Christian housewives she saw on Instagram Reels, but she'd be obsessed with watching
I
them.
would start giving them
Yeah.
all another chance though and be watching it just because she thought it was cool. I would think it'd be cool too.
Yeah.
When someone's so cool, they can make the lamest thing cool. It's like That's how you know something's up.
Yeah.
They're a child of divorce.
Child of divorce.
It's perfect. Well, I think that wraps up our episode. Any closing thoughts that you would be devastated not to share before we end the pod out?
I have none.
Oh my God, thank God we got it all in.
I know.
Where can people find you?
Well, my Instagram is Rayne Incorporated, and my Substack is called Internet Princess, and that's where I publish my sort of Hannah-ass writing. So.
Internet Princess is so Hannah-coded.
It's so Hannah-coded. It's like really unfortunate. Well, that's the other thing is that in Brooklyn in the modern day, Hannah would be on Substack, and her like
and
sad,
her app would be Internet Princess.
It would be Internet Princess, and that's really tough. And her like sad self-mythologizing, like self-insert fiction about abuse would be doing crazy fucking numbers. Like she'd be my competition.
I think to be Greenpoint Princess. I think she'd go a little bit nicher like that.
She'd go more niche. She would be Greenpoint Princess.
You wouldn't have to worry. It would be all okay. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
We'll be back next week with episode 3. But for now, live, love, love.